Welcome to the Productivity Show, a podcast where we believe you can get the important things done without sacrificing your health, family, and things that matter to you. My name is Brooks Duncan. I'm the COO of Asian Efficiency, where we help people become more productive at work and in life. And today is another Wisdom Wednesday episode where you'll get actionable productivity advice in less than 10 minutes. And the topic today is the Daily CheckIn. It's one of the skills we teach in our 25X Productivity System course. And I have a question for you. How did yesterday go? And it seems like a simple question, and you might be saying to yourself, Brooks, I can barely remember what I ate for breakfast today, let alone what I did yesterday. I totally get that. Or maybe you just have a general impression like, oh, yesterday was all right, or even worse, yesterday was brutal. And first of all, I'm very sorry if you had a brutal day yesterday. But here's the thing, every single day, something happens that we can learn from. Something happens that we can use to make improvements in the future and become more productive. Or maybe over time, there could be trends or patterns that can be really helpful, but it's hard to notice them when we're in the day-to-day. It's just the nature of being human, right? Human beings are horrible at remembering things from our day-to-day, no matter how notable they might seem at the time. An example of this internal to Asian Efficiency is we have something called a sprint retrospective, where at the end of every 2-week sprint, we get together, we talk about what went well, lessons learned, and changes we want to make moving forward. Sounds great, sounds really productive, and it is. But the problem that we found is that when the meeting rolled around, we'd have trouble remembering specifics. Maybe on a Tuesday, a team member would think to themselves, oh, it would be nice if Brooks included a link to a Dropbox file so I could just click on it instead of me having to search for it. Something that would make that person more productive and the team more productive. But maybe by the time the meeting came around, they would have forgotten all about that. And then I would have never received that really useful feedback. Or maybe going back to your brutal day yesterday, what made it brutal? Is there anything that could have happened to make it less hard? Is there anything you could have communicated to someone else in order to maybe make things better in the future? These are the sorts of things we don't really remember after the day has passed. Another example, I'm currently listening to the audiobook Mornings on Horseback, which is about the early life of Theodore Roosevelt. And you may know that as a child, Theodore Roosevelt suffered from horrible asthma attacks and other kind of illnesses. However, apparently what nobody really noticed at the time, and then historians only figured out by piecing together letters and diaries and stuff like that, is that a big chunk of Theodore Roosevelt's attacks happened on Sundays or when the family would go to church. And it was a pattern, but nobody really realized it. Well, it's not a cure for asthma, but a tool that can help with many of these problems is the Daily CheckIn. And the Daily CheckIn is exactly what it sounds like. It's a really short check-in with yourself every single day to see how things are going, see if there's any lessons that you've learned, and see if there's any improvements that come to mind. You don't have to take action on those improvements, but you want to make sure to record them while they're happening. You can also make note of anything interesting going on, good or bad sleep, are you traveling, how's your mood or mental state that day, anything notable really. And when I say short, I mean really, really short. You don't want this to take more than 5 minutes tops. If it's any longer than that, you may start dropping it, you're not going to feel like doing it, and then the habit will be gone. The important thing, though, is to record this check-in somewhere. You don't want to just kind of think about it at the end of the day. You want to record it. You want to be able to go back, learn lessons from it, and notice patterns. So, of course, then the question is, how do you do a daily check-in? And there's lots of different ways to do it. One way is what I call free form, which is you just write down anything that comes to mind. It's like a blank canvas. And some people like the lack of structure for that and the freedom that it gives you, whereas other people find it hard to get started and know what to write. If that's you, you may prefer the next type of daily check-in, and this is what I use, and it's called prompts. It's basically just questions that you answer every single day. And I would keep these really, really short, max maybe 3 or 4 tops. And it could just be something like, what went well today, what didn't go so well today, and what are some improvements you could make in the future. You might have different questions you want to ask yourself, that's fine, but just the key is keep it really short. Another way to do a daily check-in is to use an app. There are apps that actually let you do daily check-ins. I know one that Tan likes and I use too is called Dailyo, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. It's an Android or iOS app that basically asks you every day, how are you? But it prompts it in a way where you select from a series of emojis, smiley faces. So it makes it really fast and easy. And then if you want, you can give it additional context based on the other things going on that time. And again, it's all based on taps. So it just makes it a great and low effort way to do a daily check-in without doing a bunch of typing or writing. So you might prefer that. So, question, when to do a daily check-in? And this is actually a more important question than you might think, because one of the keys to building any successful habit is to do it at the right time. It's kind of like trying to force yourself to work out in the morning if you're an extreme non-morning person. I know many listeners are not morning people, which is totally fine. You can do it for a while, you can force yourself, you can drag yourself out of bed, but it's probably not going to stick long term. You might be tempted to tie your daily check-in to like your shutdown routine or your evening routine or something like that. Things we've talked about on the podcast before. And on one level, that makes sense, right? You want to tie something you want to do to something you're already doing. That's habit stacking 101. I would just caution you there though, because you don't want to be doing your daily check-in at a time when you're really tired and low energy, because you're not going to feel like it. You're going to be tempted to skip it. And then once you skip it a few times, that habit is gone. So you may want to do it a little earlier, like as you're wrapping up your workday, maybe right after dinner, or maybe if your kids are at practice or something, do it then. Leaving it to the very end of the day is a little risky in my experience, but obviously do what works for you. And that's the thing, right? You may need to experiment. In fact, you probably will, to find the right time to do your daily check-in. And that's totally fine. Just try some different times until you find a time that can stick. So that's the daily check-in. Pick a time tonight to get started. If you're not sure how to start, maybe try with those simple prompts I gave you earlier, and then you can always tweak from there. Thank you so much for listening to The Productivity Show, and I'll see you next time.